Hello, it's Thursday, once again around 12:30 Atlantic Standard Time, and so welcome uh, here in Nova Scotia. It's a really beautiful day. The sun's shining out my window at least, and it's really beautiful here in my part of the province. I hope you're having a great time wherever you are. Hope you're having a good day. It's time for our devotional again, and we're going to continue on. So I'm just going to launch us right into that, and we're going to look at Proverbs chapter 3, verse 4. Excuse me. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 4. Now, as I mentioned in the last couple of videos, as we go into Proverbs chapter 3, we see a slightly different style of writing again. Now, in the first couple of chapters, it was kind of large personifications and images and symbols and things. It was just kind of neat. In this section, there's a whole bunch of little two-verse statements, right? Do this, you'll have this result. Do this, you'll have this result. And so we've been working through this still one verse at a time, but we have to read the two verses to get the flow of thought. So we're going to do that today. I'm going to read verses 3 and 4. But yesterday we focused on verse 3. Today we're going to focus on verse 4. So I will read it. It says in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 3, it says, "Do not let kindness and truth leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart." And then in verse 4, our main verse for today, so you will find favor and good repute in the sight of God and men. God and man, meaning humans. So the idea here of the second part is based on what we talked about yesterday. I just want to briefly say, based on the idea of that if you are careful not to let kindness and truth leave you, to exit your life, instead you bind them around your neck, tie them close, write them on the tablet of your heart so they're deep inside you. If you do that, well, then verse 4, right? So you will find favor and good repute in the sight of God and men. So let's focus a little bit on verse 4, this idea of the good repute and favor in God and in the sight of God and humans. Who doesn't love favor? Who doesn't like being thought well of? Everybody likes to be thought well of, I think. And that's just kind of natural. It's built right in, actually. Human beings, we want people to have favor when they think of us and have good reputation, right? Good repute in God's eyes and in the eyes of the humans in our life. We want people to think well of us, and that's what this is saying. This is one of the great outcomes of having kindness and truth be so internalized and so closely kept in your life that they're around your neck and in your heart. Then you'll find that people generally will favor you and think well of you, and that's the idea. Once again, we got to be careful in all the Proverbs of ever thinking that there's an absolute thing here. It's not saying that every human is going to think well of you at all times and so on and so forth. It's, of course, there's always going to be some people who they're angry with you about something, or they don't like you for some reason because they just don't like your hairstyle or something. And I mean, that's just that's just life. That's humanity. Not everybody is exactly the same. And this verse isn't promising you that you'll never have people who don't like you, or that evil people will not think evil of you. I mean, that's the thing. But as a generality, when you have kindness and truth so inserted in your being that you carry them in your life, then it's going to result in favor and good repute from God and men. That's what it's saying. And that's an okay thing. We don't have to be embarrassed about that. We all want to be thought well of, and that's built into us. Of course we want to be thought well of. Makes sense. That's one of the ways to be well thought of. So let's work through our 4 questions. Excuse me. Question 1, isn't there a danger in caring too much about what people think of you? And so to sort of further the question, don't we kind of tell young people not to bow out to peer pressure, not to be so obsessed with being popular or whatever? And I would say that, yeah, absolutely. There's a danger there, because if we decide that the drive of my life is going to be gaining favor, then we're going to move away from wisdom and we're going to pursue something different. That would be a mistake. And so if the only reason you ever take an action is because you want somebody to think well of you, you could easily fall into hypocrisy or acting. When we say hypocrisy, we mean acting, like pretending, not really being genuine, not actually letting goodness, truth, and kindness go into your heart, but rather a display goes into your heart, and you decide to become a person who's going to display well. To hopefully people will like me more, and so you become kind of fake, and so that's one of the dangers of caring too much about what people think of you, and so that's definitely that's a real thing. So we don't want to get into that, of course. That's a mess, and so really it's kind of reversing the flow of things, and so we don't want to do that. We don't want the favor to be the goal. We want the favor to be an outcome that's positive, but being wise and kind is its own reward in truth. But then there's also another way to avoid the danger of caring too much about what people think about you, and that's getting the priority wrong. This verse says you will grow in the favor of God and men, right? And if we reverse that, then we will run into trouble. If we put the favor of humans above the favor of God, if we want humans to think well of us more than we care what God thinks of us, then this verse is, you get it all messed up, and you actually end up with more of a disaster than anything. It has to be in that order. We need to understand that the first priority should be, does God think well of me? Do I have his favor? Am I in good repute with God? And if that's the case, then naturally caring about other human relationships and wanting them to think well of you, then it actually works out pretty well, because you have God as a governing source over your relationships, and that's only going to turn out good, because God, of course, is the perfect relationship. He knows how to do relationships so well, because he's a Trinity. That's for another day. So it's good to have good relationships. It's good to care about what people think of you. It's good because you want to have good relationships. But we got to get the priority right. God first, man second, and we can't just let good feelings or the favor be the only reason we do things. Question 2: does the wise or logical, you might say, thing to do in life ever interfere with our relationships? There's a kind of a bit of a myth that's developed in our culture here in the West, that this sort of idea of, I know it doesn't make sense, but I just because I love you and this and that, and we have this myth that's grown up inside of us that somehow to have a good relationship, you've got to do the illogical thing, or you got to do the unwise thing. You got to be reckless in order to have a good relationship with somebody. And sometimes you just got to realize that if you're only ever doing the right thing, you're not going to have a good relationship. You got to be able to do whatever your heart leads you to. And this whole kind of way of approaching relationships here in the West, I would say, is one of the big reasons that we have so many wrecked and dysfunctional relationships here in the West, because that's just not true. It's just not true. Being reckless, being careless doesn't lead to careful and good things. It leads to bad things. It leads to wrecks. And so we don't want to do that. The world's misinformation is that relationships are essentially extra, or outside of logic or outside of wisdom, and they aren't. Broken, dysfunctional relationships are, but good relationships are very reasonable, very wise, and moral. Now remember, as we've been talking in Proverbs, morality and wisdom go together. You really can't separate them. They go together. And so good morality and good wisdom increases the good function of your relationship. So in the New Testament, there's a famous verse that's always read at weddings: love is kind, love is gentle, and so on. And it has this whole list of things that love is. A good relationship is love-based. Got this love idea. All those things it's listing about not being arrogant or puffed up, not seeking your own, and all these things, it lists this, and it doesn't rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. And there's this idea, like, there is a place where morality and wisdom says, I love you, and so I can't endorse that. And there's a boundary, a good boundary. And when you build those good boundaries in a relationship, you have better relationships. And if we decide, no, I know it doesn't make sense, but well, you're going to end up with dysfunction. The relationship may not disappear. It might, but it might not. But it won't necessarily be very functional. It may be very dysfunctional. So question 3, why is that so? I said all that. Why is that the case? I think the reasoning behind that is the idea that the non-logical or the non-thinking part of our brain is our emotions, right? And if we allow our emotions to lead us, well, they tend to lead us more after things we want. They tend to be more for our emotions to lead us. Well, they tend to lead us more after things we want. They tend to be more internally focused, right? When your emotions mostly are about, do I feel good? Am I happy? Am I full? Am I enjoying this? Am I fulfilled? Am I a lot of I, right? And our emotions tend to lead us into thinking about how I'm being affected by the world or by my relationship or by whatever situation I'm in. And so if we let those things lead, then rather than leading us to loving relationships, emotions will tend to lead us to lustful relationships. What am I getting out of this? It's a lustful relationship rather than what can I give into this, which is a loving relationship. And so we that's why that happens. That's why letting our hearts lead us is a dangerous thing. We need to let our wisdom and morality, or as this verse we're studying says, kindness and truth, good things that come from morality and wisdom. That's what should lead our relationships. Question 4, our last question: what about the good repute part of this? How is that different from favor? So it says you'll find favor and good repute in the sight of God and man. So the favor, of course, is I think well of you. That's what we've been talking about. That idea of good repute is sort of this idea of the assessment someone would have of your life. When you're in relationships, people assess. We do that. We judge, right? And we can become very judgmental, and that's not good. But naturally, we judge each other. We kind of discern each other's the way we are and how we think about each other. And then so that good repute section is kind of talking about this idea of how we think about each other in that respect. And the idea here is that if you lead a life led by truth and kindness, then the result is people are going to start to see that. They're going to go, hey, this guy's a good guy, right? Not only we have a good relationship where I like you, favor, but there'll be an intellectual assessment that will come to this point of saying, this is a good person. This person's valuable. This person's, having a relationship with him is worth something because there's a good repute. There's an assessment there that goes, yeah, this guy's reliable, or this guy's consistent, or this guy's kind. He's truthful. He's someone I can trust or follow into. And so that assessment follows because we built in the habits of being good people. And as you are a good person, people start to notice that, and it really it creates a reputation. There's an idea throughout scriptures: what you do eventually comes out, right? If you're really not a good person inside, eventually that's going to come out. And so if you instead write on the tablet of your heart kindness and truth, that will come out, and people will start to notice and they'll assess you that way. Like, oh, there's a good and kind person. So the end of it all is this: you want better relationships with God, with other humans? Internalize kindness and truth. Internalize wisdom and morality. Internalize these things, make them part of your person, and they'll start to come out in your relationships, and all your relationships, all of them will improve as a result. So God bless this effort. Help us, I pray, to do this, and God help our relationship to be good, and help our relationships to be good as well. Now, as far as tomorrow, it turns out I will probably not be able to stream tomorrow. It's Remembrance Day here in Canada, and I don't usually take that day off, but I am going to this time because of how busy I've been lately. So my next devotion will be on Tuesday, and so we'll see you then. And of course, you can always check out our Sunday teaching here on this channel on Sundays. We put our teaching up for our sermon, and so check that out too. Anyways, God bless you. We'll see you hopefully soon.